Hey everybody, welcome back to Free TV, and it is Wednesday, February 4th here, 2026. Welcome back to the channel here on a hump day where we're dealing with all kinds of evil out there in the world. I'll jump right into my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. All right, I'm so glad to be back with you. Thanks so much for supporting the channel, everyone. Please like, subscribe, and share, and consider supporting. And here we go. I'm just going to jump right in today. We've got so much going on, and I will just say this. I think that so much of the world and America is going through a kind of PTSD right now to do with everything, all of the Epstein reveal. It is really horrifying what's coming out, but also extremely damning to the global elite and their psychotic, self-narcissistic bubble that they live in. So it's fantastic to see that. We did see that the resignation of Lord Mandelson, who was the UK ambassador to the US, has become now a criminal probe. That's very exciting to see, but we need a lot more of it. And so let's put on the glasses and just jump into the news here. I'm going to kind of go into some news here in the U.S. And then get into the larger, gross of Epstein and everything else. But this anti-Sharia caucus is going to be a highlight of this video because this is very exciting in the Congress, what Keith Self and others are doing, creating, trying to push national federal legislation against Sharia law in the USA. Shouldn't have to be done because if you respect the Constitution, there's no room for Sharia law, but that's the problem when you let in tens of Islamists into the country who are intent in overthrowing the country. But we'll get there. I did want to mention this just going through that we did have the governor's debate, of course, in California last night, one of those with Steve Hilton, who's running sort of on the MAGA ticket there, not endorsed yet, but against Tom Steyer and others. And it was just so simple watching these people, how Steve Hilton was so clear and just so concise about what he wanted, which was basically economic security for Californians, ending the woke debacle, ending all of the laws based on it, and to get down to $3 gas and to use California energy and drilling sources to make that happen, whereas now they're getting like 80% of their oil from Iraq. So very interesting. And it used to be 80% production of in-state production of supply for fuel and electricity. So it's really interesting to watch him go. We'll keep covering that. But basically, so many things have been happening today. One really interesting thing, it's kind of like a Tulsa King in real life type scenario. And I only know about the show Tulsa King. It's a Sylvester Stallone, and he's playing some mob boss in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's all about how these Chinese nationals are really running all the marijuana farms, something like that. I don't really fully know the details, but there was just a real life explaining, because this is happening hugely in New England, up in Vermont, New Hampshire, all around the place where there is just huge actual CCP. Chinese mafia is actually running these growing fields of marijuana, and they're using all their Chinese slaves to work these fields. But we did have this Operation Blunt Force that went down in Oklahoma, and the AG there, Gentner Drummond, he calls it the Ho Chen. Ho Chen is the name of the central figure here, leading this mafia control of the marijuana industry to do with massive money laundering and using other people throughout Oklahoma to get fake marijuana growing licenses, commercial licenses that are then just they're just like straw growers, right, for this Chinese mafia organization run by Ho Chen. And so very interesting watching this happen. Basically, it looks like an 18-count indictment, 19 people arrested, money running through multiple states. It seems to be a huge Oklahoma to New York pipeline that was going on here. And that there was all kinds of trafficking of. You have to understand too. This gets into the synthetic, the very harmful, very dangerous, and when it's being done by Chinese nationals, I would imagine some of what we're seeing with all the mass hospitalizations, et cetera, of people who are smoking this really dangerous, high octane plus synthetic elements in it, marijuana. And so basically, what A.G. Drummond had to say is laws, borders, and enforcement matters. Oklahoma is no longer a safe haven for foreign-based cartel criminals and enterprises. Their enterprises here in Oklahoma. And he said that this gets into mass money laundering, racketeering, money going back to China hugely. They've seized bank accounts and all of this. So that's exciting news to see, and I love to see it. We did have the kind of depressing news today of Tom Homan coming up and doing this presser on how there is unprecedented and never before seen cooperation with Tim Walz and Jacob Frey, the mayor there of Minneapolis. And of course, we have that new DSA mayor in St. Paul, where apparently there was just such unprecedented cooperation that they're letting ICE now go into the prisons and jails to pick up the illegal criminals already having committed crimes. That there has been a 700 officer drawdown out of Minneapolis. And while that all sounds really great on the surface, Minnesota is going through massive fraud connected to these exact people. So is this a sort of situation here where it's just you're going to cooperate with us or else? But it doesn't look like it, because there had a huge congressional, actually Senate hearing today on the Minnesota fraud. And that's very interesting too. And I'll get into that in a moment. But this was really surprising to see. And Homan couldn't say enough of just how much there is this unprecedented cooperation. And yeah, it's probably unprecedented because their backs are to the wall. So we'll keep watching and see what goes on there. We also had this critical minerals summit today, and we had Secretary Bessent testifying before the Senate Finance Committee, and the two kind of roll in together interestingly. But excuse me, we see J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio at this critical minerals summit, where they have something like a couple dozen world leader representatives there, basically, as they described it, representing 2/3 of the global GDP from Europe, Asia, and Africa, I believe. And this is about it's about creating investment into rare earth minerals, mining and refining here in the US. They talked about building two new, for the first time in many years, smelting operations here in the USA, but they just can't somehow seem to get the investment they need out of the USA, and it has something to do with regulatory issues to do with rare earths, and this all gets into China and the undercutting of the market with their access through their operations. I don't know if you saw in the Congo last weekend, we had this mine collapse. I think it was a lithium mine. I'm pretty sure hundreds of people dead. Okay, it was like some landslide, the mines collapsed, and all these, and they used children there to mine, and all these people just dead. Okay, so like, they're basically saying we need to create what they want to call the preferential trade zone to be established with these countries who would be involved to stop China and India and others flooding the market with cheap minerals that undercut the market in the US. They want to create supply chains within the preferential trade zone that will be protected and consistent. And the countries that participate will be protected in their supplies to be continuously supplied with rare earth minerals. And this is basically to get investment for building out this infrastructure in the USA. It gets into that project Vault I talked about yesterday, with the $12 billion to be spent on this mineral reserves to make sure that the US is at the forefront of this, needed for everything. And we get their whole thing is we need market stability, so that investors can rely on. So that's what's going on there. That is, kind of a huge deal because this is the only way the rest of it can work is if these rare earths are available easily to the United States without the constant having to go back and forth with the G, which Trump did have a call with Xi today. And they're gearing up towards their meetup later in this spring. And this is as Xi is going really hard with the CCP and having fired his top general, going with the young generals that want to full bore, invade Taiwan, etc. But going really hard with the yuan to be an alternative world currency to compete with the dollar now that BRICS is kind of, on the back burner right now. But we'll see what goes on there. It's a big, it is an economic war is part of all of it as we, try to, get feet back under the USA as a major economic superpower again. And so, we also had this other interesting bust that happened in Florida, where the U.S. attorneys were talking about an international scheme involving U.S. military service members providing what they call common access cards or CAT cards out of the Department of War, involving military service members that were going to the CCP. So this is a whole nother thing. Don't have much more information on that now, but this is about basically getting access into our military, into our Department of War of the CCP. There's a lot more going on there with huge amounts being discovered of what Biden and Obama and the hold behinds, how much access that the CCP has into our Department of War. So very interesting there. And then with Besant testifying on U.S. financial stability, he's basically his main topics were safety and the soundness of the economy, basically to create a safe way for the U.S. economy to go forward. He was talking about things like the importance of cybersecurity, that basically the cyber attacks constantly attacking the financial system here is a major liability that must get fixed. Modernizing the regulatory frameworks, dealing with material risk, enhanced transparency, basically saying that we need to get these regulatory frameworks updated so that they can protect small banks, so that small banks can have a larger mortgage lending ability, that they know their local area the best, and credit unions and et cetera, and to kind of reprioritize that. But then, of course, hugely AI to be used to strengthen this stability with system resilience and to weigh risk management. So, I know that sounds kind of all boring, but it's really important. These things that are going on to rejuvenate, what Trump called Liberation Day a year ago, is about how all of this incredible income that's coming through the tariffs, through the investments into the U.S., the reshoring of corporations, the reshoring of manufacturing, how all of this needs to be safeguarded within the financial system, and how that is leading up, of course, to what will become Kevin Warsh as the new. And I'm going to, in my next video, get into this whole thing about him being the son-in-law of Ron Lauder, who is, I believe, the head right now of the American Jewish Congress. So there's all kinds of stuff that we got to look into there, but we'll get there. And we have Sharia-Free America Caucus. This is very important. That got launched yesterday. 33 members of the Congress from 18 states, and also Senator Tommy Tuberville sponsoring it from the Senate. And this has to do with basically coming out with national legislation to ban Sharia law across the country. And they're referencing things like the Muslim Brotherhood's general strategic program for the plan in the USA, which is all about the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to conquer America with Islam through quiet invasion and absorption. And this, they could solve this really easily, okay, because there didn't used to be Muslims allowed in Congress and allowed in elected positions. And people can say, oh, that's religious discrimination, etc. What they've been making a point to say here is that Islam is a political organization. This is not simply a religion or a way of worship. This is a conquering plan. And it's really important. You have multiple, Keith Self is the one that put this up. You have Eli Crane out of Arizona, multiple representatives out of Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. And so I will link below. Hopefully you can see the Congress members who are involved. Give them an attaboy, attagirl, because, get up on their socials and say, thank you for sponsoring this because we need this. But it was not long ago, okay, that Muslims were allowed in office. And then we saw Obama just put out a clarion call to get as many Muslims from around the world and bring them in on these H-1B visas, et cetera, to come in and work in these different positions throughout the government, local, the judiciary, all of it. And this is one thing that I prayed coming forward will be that Muslims cannot be in office, not in a constitutional republic, regarding that the main objective here is to adhere to Sharia law, the central tenet of Islam, and so which is, of course, that everybody must turn Muslim, and it's a conquering strategy. And not to mention, this banning of Sharia courts is a central tenet in this legislation that they want going forward, because there are Sharia courts throughout the USA. People were like, "What? That's crazy." It's extrajudicial, but it's destroying the lives. And the Sharia courts are largely to do, of course, with the oppression of women and girls and children. Okay, so you have a woman trying to leave her abusive husband, women trying to leave Islam, women trying to get jobs, do things with their lives, or protect their children. And these Sharia courts are controlling them, and they live in these tight-knit communities, and it's very hard to escape it. So banning Sharia courts, of course, banning all call to prayer operations that are going on, like in Michigan and Minnesota, all this call to prayer where Americans are having to hear these 5 times a day call to prayer throughout the town. That's insane in the United States of America. And also, let's not forget female genital mutilation. Okay, this is a practice that began in Africa prior to Islam, adopted by Islam. That is about, we think of the circumcision of boys and how horrible that is, and people say that's so horrible, shouldn't do it for medical reasons, for our biology, what it means. Well, for girls, this isn't the same thing at all. This isn't circumcision. When we say it's female genital mutilation, they excise the clitoris, right, and sometimes part of the labia majora. And people need to understand that the clitoris and the muscle attached to it, it goes all around the vaginal canal. It's an enormous muscle. And so this is a torture for women throughout their lives, and especially if it's not done mildly, and often it's very crudely done in very bizarre situations. But you have all these doctors doing it out of office. It's not legal, but they do it anyway. And it's basically to crack down on this female genital mutilation. So this is fantastic news. We need it so much, and we're going to keep pushing for it. And I will keep reporting on it. I might get back to it again in this video. But I did want to let people know that we have a lot of election stuff going on as well. There was a great election integrity call today with Stern American. This is, of course, Steve Stern out of the Precinct Strategy. He does these calls once or twice a month. There was one today that just knocked it out of the park, giving people information, because they're coming for paper ballots totally. They want to get rid of them, like Spanberger is attempting to get rid of even the fixed precincts, okay? That has been the way of elections from forever and in law. get rid of the fixed precincts that are controlled by civil law, and instead just have these voting centers, no paper whatsoever, and just machine centralized counting, okay, with no humans involved. It is direct tyranny. But there was really great stuff there. But what came through this so hard, and you can go to precinctstrategy.com to get involved. And also, they're doing specifically right now before the midterms, Precinct Project USA, to fill positions that need to get filled, because it's amazing how much of these positions just aren't even filled, which is how the Democrats have done these steals in the recent elections. But really huge is the SAVE Act, or the Save America Act, that includes the picture ID for voting, as if that, why wasn't that in the first SAVE Act? But of course, we had tried to get that attached for the Senate to have to add it to the funding bill, and didn't. And we have, of course, Thune, who doesn't care. I believe McConnell is now on some kind of flu-like virus thing again, and he's uncompass mentis. He's out. This is like not only my guesstimation; it's true news that came out that McConnell is down and out again. And so, that era is ending. But the Thunes of the world, who keep, like Johnson, just keep stifling the real stuff that we badly need, like the SAVE Act, as our elections are hurtling forward. We absolutely need your call to Leader Thune in the Senate. That is 202-224-2321, 202-224-2321, direct to Senator Thune. Okay, make that call, be counted, be part of it, right? Actions to go along with your prayers. And we've got also incredible things coming along with the push to release Tina Peters out of Colorado. And now with the Fulton County raid, it's looking better and better for Tina Peters, but not in her daily life in prison, where she's ill and it's awful. And so what people have been doing is calling directly to Governor Polis's office, Governor Polis there in Colorado. And his number is 303-866-2471, 303-866-2471. Thousands and thousands of people calling. And sometimes daily, thousands, like 6,000 people yesterday, I believe. So be part of that. Give a call. You're part of a huge group of people. Put your call in to say, free Tina Peters. She did nothing wrong, which she absolutely didn't. She did the exact law, which was to preserve the federal elections that they were trying to erase from the systems of the software of the DOMINION machines in Mesa County in Colorado. So give that a call. Really fantastic and important. And on that note, I will also say, while we're on elections, this important little titty bit that needs to also happen, which is hitting up all of your Congress people to get them to take action. And this, and of course, the number for your Congress is 202-225-3121, 202-225-3121. This has to do with Amber McReynolds. And this is Natalie G. Winters, who does such a great job on Substack. I'm going to link I'll link her below for another story to do with that crystal exercise out of the WHO that I mentioned yesterday. But Amber McReynolds is on the U.S. Postal Service Board with no qualifications to do anything USPS or organization or administration to do with large organizations. She simply was put there because she was a Biden massive Democrat activist for voter fraud, basically, for entertainment purposes only. But she was put on by Biden in charge of the mail-in ballots through the USPS, liaising consistently with CISA, right, and CISA, to do with the elections. And every day, she claims, and it's come out in articles out of New York Times, etc., that basically she was involved in capturing all the swing states to go for Biden. And she had almost daily calls with Brad Raffensperger there in Georgia. So hopefully she's nervous anyway. Hopefully she'll resign. But you know how these people dig in. And the action, of course, is to get her out because her term does not expire as head of the U.S. Postal Service Board. And I can't remember who's in charge of the USPS right now. He was so uninteresting and seemed so ineffective. And certainly, you go to the post office and you kind of know not much is going on good there lately. I've got to take a look at him. And so we can hit him up directly, get this woman off the U.S. Postal Service Board, Amber McReynolds. So that's an important little tidbit as well. And of course, we had Ryan Ruth um, convicted today, sentenced today after his conviction, where he got a life sentence plus 84 months, life plus 7 years. So, that his purgatory after life is 7 years still that he's there. Kind of like maybe Hillary Clinton's brother, Tony, right? With this interesting stuff about, was Tony's body really the Epstein body they removed from the Met prison? We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, seven afterlife years there is Ryan Ruth for specifically the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. And this came again from our fantastic Judge Eileen Cannon, who is doing heavy lifting with the grand juries that are assembled there for the grand conspiracy cases that are coming up and going to be epic and happening right now. And it was her again in Fort Pierce, Florida, who passed down that sentence. And his lawyer, Martin Roth, basically came out saying they're going to appeal. They're going to appeal the use, Cannon's use of the terrorism enhancement law as part of her sentencing, bringing this into it as an act of terrorism, that wasn't right, because our wonderful man Routh, he went, don't you know, and he volunteered in Ukraine. And what a great man. He went to Afghanistan trying to recruit people to fight in Ukraine, Martin Roth. And he even wanted to get those Afghanis to go fight in Taiwan to fight the CCP. I mean, the ways that these people talk, you're just like, wow, it's just amazing that they can just even think this way, or actually, like, with a straight face, say it to the American public. I think the public has gone kind of off Ukraine at this point, but I still see those bumper stickers out there, so who knows? But I did also want to say this, for those people out there that are football fans and are going to be watching the Super Bowl, go Patriots, against the Seahawks. And there's Bad Bunny. He was on the Grammys last night or Sunday night, whenever, like last night, the days they keep passing. But Sunday night, I didn't watch. But I did see a clip of him saying that we're all Americans. We're all Americans. Anybody who's in this country is an American because of the fact that you're here. I mean, it was just ridiculously, insanely stupid, but also complete and total lies, as Hollywood is crumbling, as these Epstein files are coming out, and Nicki Minaj is coming out with her great information constantly. But if you are going to watch the Super Bowl, I want to let people know that TPUSA, it has what they're calling the All-American Halftime Show, that starts exactly at halftime. And you just go over to Real America's Voice, or realamericasvoice.com, or TPUSA channel on, if you're on your TV, you can switch it over to like YouTube on your smart TV and go right to watching the All-American Halftime Show. And you get great people on there like Gabby Barrett, who I love. She's fantastic. Kid Rock, I'm not sure who the whole lineup, but if you go to TPUSA, I think you can find out the lineup. It should start around 8 p.m. So it's just great to have that counter to the narrative that patriot culture is stepping in to do a great show, even though they'll probably have their own little propaganda in there, which is disturbing for sure. And so I wanted to go from there to talk about this real quick, which is in Costa Rica. We had great news as well this week, where we have Laura Fernandez in Costa Rica won the first round of their presidential election. These rounds, rounds of voting, these countries. But she won over 50%, 50 to 53%. This is the Sovereign People's Party, the PPSO. winning 50% plus. She's 39 years old. Her whole platform is Bukele light, but it is really like massively tough on organized crime, gang activity, prison imprisonment for them, and cartel drug trafficking being broken in Costa Rica. Fantastic. And her other platform is all about economic restoration for Costa Rica, security for the people, employment for the people, growing opportunity and economic stability. So very exciting as we keep watching these wins of people across the world who are coming up, stepping in for what is, this great, great revival of humanity. Okay, and so I'll get into this exercise crystal, and we'll move on to some Epstein stuff and this thing about Tony Rodham, right? Hillary's bro, and other stuff to do with the evil and awful Epstein files. But I did want to clarify this IHR, this WHO pandemic exercise that happened in December, that talked not as if there would be as if there could be a new pandemic, but they're planning for what will be the new pandemic, and they're describing it as a novel respiratory illness. This is called the IHR exercise crystal, a capital all capitals crystal. 31 countries, several weeks in December, where they were testing out which are those new international health regulations, that we were fighting forever. And Trump, got us out of the WHO finally. It took a year before we could get out. But this is basically, it was all about testing the countries and what are their legal obligations to run their countries under a pandemic. It's all about locking down the borders, locking down the people, lockdown travel, lockdown everything. And this is what it was all meant to be. And they're testing it out now. So that, tells us that in their minds, they've got something coming, right? And hopefully we'll continue to be able to shut that down before it gets out. But it is disturbing to see it going on. And so I did want to get into this thing here for a minute about Tony Rodham. It's seeming kind of credible, okay? Because Tony Rodham, he was the one that got these Haitian gold mining rights, the gold mining rights to Haiti after they destroyed it with the earthquake and then the hurricane, right? And they're rich with gold there, kind of like Venezuela, and they basically made it so that only Rodham, would control these gold mines. And then it ended up, a few years ago, this is around Epstein's death time. It was a couple months, okay, before Epstein died, that we heard that Tony Rodham died. And it was kind of strange. There wasn't a lot of description of how or why he died. I think they tried to make him look bad, like he was alcoholic or a drug user or something. And then he was just suddenly dead, not talked about, move on from here, Tony Rodham. But he looks a lot like Epstein. Sort of a Goyim version, right, of Epstein, as Epstein would call him, a goy. And so basically, he does look a lot like him. And there's all these pictures coming out. And of course, I talked yesterday about the situation of, the worker at the jail, the prison, who said they just wheeled out Epstein in the middle of the night. Bill Barr was his visitor. And of course, never seen again. He's dead, et cetera, et cetera. And then the body missing the arm tattoo that Epstein had, the different ears, kind of Biden style with the different ears. And this situation of, and Tony Rodham had been to Epstein Island multiple times, multiple recorded photos of him, et cetera. And the situation of, did Hillary have to give up her brother, right, as part of her commitment here to the cabal? I'm sure she'd do in a second for entertainment purposes only. And especially if she was the the recipient of those gold rights, but basically, as if there, wasn't already with the Clinton Global Initiative, et cetera. But very interesting here to see this where, you know, if that was what happened, okay, was he dead for 2 months or was he alive, right? Kind of on the island or wherever he was, kind of kept in some cage or, kept somewhere and being like, it's only for your own protection, what they could have told him or what they could have done. Once Epstein was arrested, was it like, hey, Tony, you're in danger. You got to come in here and, and hide in our bunker. And then, it's a very interesting scenario that people are talking about. And I'm probably bringing more out about it than even what I'm seeing. But it just is very interesting to watch how these psychopaths act and what they do. And as it's coming out more and more, this whole situation of just the total horrors that are coming out just of the 3 million data points that were released, just right, the videos and etc., the pictures, the photos, that doesn't even touch the CIA files. There's the CIA files, they're the ones, okay, for whom Epstein worked ultimately, right, and most closely. And so the CIA files, of course, would be, if we had, church committee hearing type situation, what we would find in those CIA files would be devastating to get into, especially all the science related stuff and the use of the children and the Zorro Ranch and the cloning and the creation of humanoids for organs and all of it. And a really interesting touch point on that is the movie The Island. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You can watch it without, it doesn't have tons of horrifying, it's not overtly awful in the violence that it shows, is what I'm trying to say. But The Island, I think it's Mike Bay. Is it Mike Bay? I think it's Mike Bay. But basically, where you get he was a Bay. Michael Bay was a close Epstein associate. He's the one that made the film The Island. And when referencing to Stephen Bannon during the interview, and he kept talking about, this is like Stranger Things. This is like this is where we need to be going. All of this kind of information. Well, Mike Bay did create the film The Island, and this is where these billionaires convinced clients that, hey, we have these kind of, jelly humanoid things that never come to full human potential. They have no consciousness. We just, need to create them with your own genetic material, and then you can have made to order organs. You can double your lifespan, all this kind of stuff. But it turns out behind the scenes and the sinister whatever is that the jelly people wouldn't live. Their organs would fail if they didn't gain human consciousness. That it wasn't functional, and so they just had this laboratory of clones that lived in this underground bunker, very much Zorro Ranch style, and they would get old enough. They basically would come out. They were created at they were already adults. Okay, they would just suddenly be alive. They wouldn't remember anything. They'd have fake memories implanted into their brains through all kinds of mind control ways and digital implantation and all of this. And it turns out that they were, it would be like they would, their big win was like when they got to go to the island, okay, and they were told there was like a nuclear holocaust or a giant pandemic, and that's why they have to stay in this enclosed space, etc. A couple of them, break away and find their human counterparts to their cloneness and kind of blow up the whole thing. But basically, these movies, there was another one called Never Let Me Go, right, where it was like these kids were told they were elite children at this special school, but really they were just bred for their organs, and after a few surgeries they'd be dead. I mean, this is just real stuff, okay? The Chinese do it en masse, okay? Something like it was just an insane, like 90,000 organs to order surgeries per year coming out of China. I know there's a new book on it coming out from a guy who has worked on this for decades, with Falun Gong and et cetera. The political prisoners, where they just record all of their tissue samples and their DNA and their genetics. They try to get them as healthy as possible when they catch them and put them in prison, because for the organ sales. And this gets beyond that into, of course, stem cells. And Tom Homan has come out in the recent days and said, hey, we found about 125,000 of those 500,000 missing children that Biden brought in. Mayorkas, the criminals, the scum of the earth. Okay, all connected with Hias and the Vatican, the Catholic bishops, and all of it, associations and all that money, bringing these children in, and this getting into, when we can uncover the horrors of Zorro Ranch, we will get places. But it's important for people to kind of understand that we get this. In those documents, it's showing these billionaires, Richard Branson, okay, his own island, okay, but Peter Nygaard's already arrested in prison. He was doing this en masse decades ago, and he had an island that was just around the corner from Joe Biden's brother's island, okay, that was somewhere off of St. Thomas in the Caribbean. So all of their islands, right? Barack Obama was always going to Branson's Island, and it was all about all of the sex slave women there, and coming out through these emails just horrendously, and all these people need to be arrested, certainly investigated, and then arrested and put in prison, as we know. But I think it's important to understand the psychology of these people, what it means to believe that you are better than other humans, and how these other cultures have this tribal way of thinking. Outside of Christian Western civilization that believes in the individual sovereignty of the human being and natural law of God, right? And Christ's revelation of that, right? To know thyself, and that you have the absolute, you are made in the image of God. We all are. And that, it's a crime to deny that, and that to go against that, right? To think of somebody as less than human than you, and especially crimes against children, is just the greatest evil. But in these other tribal type, it's not even religions, because they're all Satanists. Okay, they use these different religions as their cover. But this kind of psychopathy that comes with extreme narcissism, and this sort of, I saw one video refer to it as psychic inflation, right? Where you get so dedicated to doing evil, thinking that you are God versus in the image of God, that you just don't see people as human anymore. That they don't have the same concept of humanity, and that's what we need to just get out of, as the scourge to the earth and to humanity. And that, of course, is what our jobs here are as Christians, is to expose this and rid this from the earth. Okay, this criminality, this use of other humans for our own ends, it is absolutely evil. And this reveal is showing people that so much. And one thing that's coming out really intensely, as much as the talks of all of these different Jewish elites in these Epstein emails talking about the goyim, and there doesn't matter, about those Christians, basically, and forget about how they wouldn't even have sex with the black people. I mean, that's just so, I mean, the racism and the sickness, the elitism is so gross. But a big part in here seems to have been how to make the Jewish race genetically stronger, to fix a lot of what are these inherent sort of tribal broken genes that are, especially in the Ashkenazi Jewish line, to do with major cancers that are very common. This to do, with certain neurological issues, mental illness issues, these kinds of things that have plagued them. And it's very interesting to watch as all of this is coming out, that these people are sick, and they need to be stopped. right? They need to be stopped. And it is about these people, these people that are these elites, okay, and how we can strip them of their power. And, really it has to be that, you know, we have to demand it en masse, not just online. We have to have huge, I believe that there needs to be a presence out in the streets. The left doesn't own protests and doesn't own rallies. That these demands do have to get organized to the extent that we'll be able to to get um, get justice against these people, but also to protect humanity and protect Western civilization, right? We're seeing here, just even if we look at this, throughout time with there was Frankism, there's cartel Babylon, there's Babylon, right? And then there's the Radnites, and then there's just the economy of sin and the royals, and up through humanity, right? Just the use of the economy of sin, meaning slave trade, sexual slave trade, drugs, pedophilia, all of this, bribery, all of this, okay, just constantly being the thing that causes the evil in the world, usury, right, all of it. And then we get, in Frankism, the whole thing of the flipping of the morals, and the more evil you do gets into Crowleyism and Satanism, and the real push of that into America, by our CIA and our post World War II psychos, okay, that came out of Germany and came out of the Trotskyites of Russia and all of it, into this country to do this mass formation, to push Satanism and to get it into the minds of America so hugely, and to create these satanic ritual abuse networks throughout the Dominion countries, okay, throughout Western civilization, to get it to this point of collapsing Christian Western civilization. It's, you see it with the Fabians, and it just goes on. Nazism, Zionism, and then what do we get? Scientism, right? And then we get globalism, right? And it's all these same people with their same networks of people, a lot of the same family bloodlines, and we're dealing with this evil, straight up, where they think that with their cult of self perceived, like Uber mentioned, okay, that they get to be the chosen ones, or the superhumans, right? The super intelligent humans that have the right to subvert and destroy Christian Western civilization, and, um, and destroy God's natural law, for Lucifer, right? It's their form of enlightenment and tyrannical control. It is an obsession with control. And so, anyway, I just went on a little rant there at the end, but I'm going to leave it there after this next thing I wanted to touch on, which was the Minnesota fraud hearing in the Senate. It was led by Ted Cruz. And you had David Hoke there, David Hoke, who was the man who had done all the massive research, who reported with Nick Shirley in those epic, explosive, viral videos about all the fraud of the Somalis in Minnesota. And it's very interesting because you get Robert Weissman. Okay, this is the Weissman law firm, most elite out there for the lawfare and the attacks, is the attorney there representing state of Minnesota to do with the Somali fraud. And Senator Eric Schmitt, who's fantastic, I think he'd make a great speaker, honestly, if we could get rid of Thune with 27 votes. Eric Schmitt, he's basically is saying that it's the situation with these people who, even if they are already naturalized citizens, they've debased their oath, and they lied, and they committed crimes against what their oath was to become naturalized, which is that you have to promise to support the United States, to do it no harm, to support the laws and the civics of the United States, the Constitution, and the Republic. And so he's putting forth the Scam Act. The Scam Act, he's been talking about this for a couple of weeks, but now he's fully talking about it here at this hearing. This is to denaturalize those committing fraud or joining gangs or attempting to undermine the U.S. government, being part of organized crime, etc., that they absolutely, legally and lawfully should, not only can be, but should be denaturalized and deported. 100% support that. And he called out Weissman very, very strongly. And he said to Weissman, you are funded by George Soros, right? Just said it straight up, which was fantastic. And Weissman said, well, part of our funding does come from the Open Societies Foundation, etc. So showing there again, for people to learn just how pervasive this Alex Soros money is, married to Huma Abedin, the red, blue, green alliance of infiltration, invasion, subversion, and overthrow of the United States and Europe that is going on. And so we're going to keep watching it all. We have the National Fraud Task Force also being announced that will be led by J.D. Vance, and this is to bring that Assistant AG Ferguson, who's in charge of this task force, to work directly under Vance. And so this is bringing that to the White House level. As much as I'm not a fan of Vance, it's getting it out of the DOJ control. And this is so important because Scott Bessent mentioned specifically during his Finance Committee testimony today that this task force against the fraud is going to be massive in restoring the money to Americans, and that California is hugely targeted in this, which is fantastic, and that they expect the fraud, from what they're seeing so far in California, to be at least 10 times that of Minnesota, if not much, much more, bringing it into the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars out of California. So it just keeps going on from there, right? It's a never-ending supply of the humans being in that animated contest of life here, fighting for our freedom, for our sovereignty, for our republic, and for Western civilization and natural law, okay? God's law for all of us, that we are all created equal and in his image, and that if we can help people break free from their mind prisons to understand their own worth and how it's so, talk about what it means to be a superior human. Like, these people think they're superior by lying and deceiving and stealing and thieving and getting an edge up and stealing and lying to your face. That is absolute failure of your human precious life. Okay, the wonderful thing, how you progress, okay, and make it through the marathon to hear those beautiful words. Thank you, my faithful servant, is that you were honest and you did good, okay, and you worked hard and you helped others, and together you build something beautiful. We're supposed to do it together. It's not. It's never supposed to be, just this own private Idaho little person fighting the world for their own gain. It's the absolute opposite of that. And so, anyway, I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Thanks so much for listening to me rant, and I hope you found some great new information points here. It is never ending, very interesting, and very active and incredible time. So be part of it. Get out there and get involved in, of course, these midterms and that Precinct Win USA plan. All of that will be linked below. We need people to get really active here in these months, especially the next couple months, to get really launched. So take action, and you are free. Thanks so much for watching. If you found something worth supporting, there's ways to support the channel below, and I would so appreciate it in these lean times. Thank you so much. You are free. I'll see you tomorrow.